his covetousness was I wroth, and smote him. I hid me and was wroth, and he went on frowardly in the way of his heart. I have seen his ways, and will heal him. I will lead him also, and restore comforts to him, and to his mourners I create the fruit of the lips. Peace, peace to him that is far off, and to him that is near, saith the Lord, and I will heal him. But the wicked are like the troubled sea, when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, and we're going to read into chapter 23 a bit. Rob not the poor, because he is poor, neither oppress the afflicted in the gate. For the Lord will plead their cause, and spoil the soul of those that spoiled them. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways, and get a snare to thy soul. Be not thou one of them that strike hands, or of them that are sureties for debts. If thou hast nothing to pay, why should he take away thy bed from under thee? Remove not the ancient landmark, which thy fathers have set. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men. When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee, and put a knife to thy throat, if thou be a man given to appetite. Be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. Labor not to be rich. Cease from thine own wisdom. Wilt thou eat... It's hard to... these glasses are not good. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle toward heaven. Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee. The morsel which thou hast eaten shalt thou vomit up, and lose thy sweet words. Speak not in the ears of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of thy words. Remove not the old landmark, and enter not into the fields of the fatherless. For their Redeemer is mighty. He shall plead their cause with thee. Apply thine heart to instruction, and thine ears to the words of knowledge. Withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with the rod, and shalt deliver his soul from hell. My son, if thine heart be wise, my heart shall rejoice, even mine. Yea, my reins shall rejoice, when thy lips speak right things. Let not thine heart envy sinners, but be thou in the fear of the Lord all the day long. For surely there is an end, and thine expectation shall not be cut off. This is very much a son, father to a son kind of wisdom we're reading right now. I still haven't gotten my Bible. I didn't mention it yesterday, but I forgot to get it from 2 days ago. I'm going to stop reading there. I don't need to mark that. Okay. Rob not the poor because he is poor. Obviously, the vulnerable are vulnerable, so they shouldn't be robbed. I mean, I suppose there is a portion of humanity. It is part of human nature, must be. I don't know, but to be predatory on the weak. I've always had, I almost think of it as a mutation that I don't feel that way, I guess, because it always seemed like the guys around me were pretty predatory. Other men, other boys, I should say, because I was thinking about guys around me mostly as a child. And I know guys who weren't, but I knew plenty who were, for whom weakness was an invitation. You show weakness, that invites them. And I realize now, it wasn't just, they were just bad seed necessarily. It's like one kid I know who was, he wasn't much of a bully, but he was a mouthy kind of kid and bullied that way, verbally and socially and that kind of thing. But, he had, I remember his dad insulting him in front of me, being abusive towards his own son in front of me, calling him things I won't repeat because it was profane. And I realized, I'm like, wow, I see why he's such he looks at weakness, he despises it, and also wants to poke you there, I despise weakness too, actually, to a certain degree. I don't mostly though, for me, I don't look at it in strangers as an opportunity to take advantage of them. I don't, that's weird for me. But in my own children and my own self, when I see, or people around me, people I care about, I like to see them, like my children, I like them to be strong. Not just physically, but mentally. Socially strong, to be confident in themselves. And not, not just do what you're told, but also, it's good to be obedient, especially to the Lord, but not to fools, there you go. Not just to authority for authority's sake, not just because of men's persons. Well, he's in charge. We got to do what he says. Yeah, but he's telling you to jump off a bridge. Maybe you shouldn't do it just because he's in charge. It's funny, the things your mom used to tell you about your friends, you got to apply that to people in government too. If your government told you to jump off a bridge, would you do it? Would you do it with them? Neither oppress the afflicted in the gate. But I guess what I would say about it overall though is, okay, I don't sympathize deeply with the predatory, but for someone who if that is something that's rings true to you, it's when I see people that look like easy pickings, I feel like swooping in and taking the prey. I think you should disabuse yourself of that instinct. That's a bad, I look at that as no different than my instinct to lust. It's not a welcome partner in your life. You need to pray about that one. Or at least know, even if that's your instinct, know that you shouldn't do that, right? I have a lot of instincts I don't follow. I think that's true. Human instinct towards sin, Yeah, for example, a lot of times my instinct, I don't know if this is really instinct, but because I could say my instincts tell me to stop eating because I'm not going to be good. But often I want to eat more than I'm going to eat. I go to the end of the meal and I think I like to stuff my face with even more of that stuff because that's good. I want that taste in my mouth again. But then you just don't. Rob, not the poor because he's poor. Is there another spiritual level I want to look at that? Well, yeah. I do think there's an aspect to the poor in spirit getting robbed all the time by people who pretend to be fat cats. I'm a real big spiritual guy. Come here and bring me all your money. And it's funny because prosperity gospel preachers, they're the biggest scumbags on the earth. Well, among the biggest scumbags, they're right in there with the chief. They rank in way below people guilty of genocide, obviously, but they're still pretty scummy. And they do target poor people because it's you think about it. It's they're promising riches. If you give to the Lord, the Lord's going to make you rich. I can tell you, I've been studying the Bible for a long time. there's a couple verses they take you to for breadcrumb trails. Let's go to Malachi and see what it says there about, see, test me now and see if I don't give you a harvest, whatever. Some of the favorite prosperity passages right there in the Final Prophet, right? I'm sure you've encountered guys preaching along those lines if you've lived on this planet for very long. And it is a case of robbing the poor because they're poor. It's like, because they need money, you take advantage of them. And the Lord will plead their cause. What does that mean? Plead their cause is not really the way that is not a good translation of this. So let's look at this in the you gotta say, and this comes up a lot of times. It's mentioned several times that he will plead their cause. And this spoil the soul of those that spoil them. Notice when God goes after, he goes after your soul. That should scare you. Those of you who do these things, not those of you who believe in Christ, even if you used to do those things, because through Christ we have passed from judgment to life. We're reconciled to God. But part of that reconciliation, I think it's important to, not just say like, oh, thanks, I'll take the story. Jesus died for my sins. That's all I know. That's all I want to know. That's all I need to know. Right? And he rose from the dead, that too, and I confess it. Okay. Romans 10:9 complete. I'm done. I don't want to hear anything. No. Proverbs, no. Don't want to hear. No. It's like, it's such a funny, weird attitude to tell people to be that way. To emphasize that. Like, you don't have to do nothing. Don't get baptized. Yeah, I know technically you don't have to do any of those things. That kind of mental loophole jumping attitude is deadly. That's what the one talent guy did. He thought, I don't have to do anything technically. I've received faith. Buried in the earth now. That's it. And a lot of people, it's like that. It's like they receive the faith as such. It's not always necessarily like this heartfelt commitment. They're just like, well, I'll go to church. Sure, honey. We'll be Christians. Sure. You, if it's important to you, absolutely. There's plenty of just obediently doing the thing and going through the motions. And, and to the degree that you're going through the motions of church, but living a Christian life, I'm not going to, there's nothing wrong with that. Reading your Bible and, obeying it and all that, right? But obviously we're talking about people who don't, who think they can just pocket that knowledge and then go about just smiting their fellow servants and eating and drinking with the drunken, which Jesus specifically warned against. And I take it as just, what would I call it? What's the right word? Indicative, or, that's like the case, like a lot of these hyperbolic cases where it says, you gotta beat your son with the rod. It does, so what, I gotta beat him all the time for nothing? No, that's not what it means, obviously. If they do something worthy, like he that is worthy of stripes, stripes. He that is worthy of, whatever else, of fines. He that is worthy of some lesser punishment. Greater and lesser. I said he can, like I said, it also says don't provoke them to wrath. It's like I said, we're talking about children. Try to give your teenage son a beating. I don't know if you can fix that. That's just, it's not, like I said, when they're too close to adults, you got to show them more respect than that. That's the way I feel. That's why I never spank a teenager. 12 is the maximum age for spanking. Train up a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it. If you get him before adolescence, you're going to have a good experience in the teen years. But it has to be done with a loving way. You can't beat a child into compliance and then think, yeah, that's going to hold. Especially when they've been beaten to comply with small things. Brush your teeth. Wham, wham, wham. Do your homework. Wham, wham. It's just crazy. Yeah. You spilled milk. Wham, wham, wham. I've never spanked anybody for spilling milk. I mean, if they dumped it out on purpose, like as a 5-year-old, that would probably be, I'd be like, what are you doing? I'm like, at least the first time. So they did it like as an insolent kind of, I never had insolent, defiant kids. They all pretty much feared me and respected me. 100%. Right? Not pretty much. Completely. And so I'm telling you, as someone who earned the fear and love of his children, how you can get both, because I've done it. Oppress the afflicted. Why are the afflicted in the gate? Well, people often would sit in the gate to beg, because that's where people would be coming in and out. And you see people often, like I've noticed more people, in my town, they go to Walmart and they hang out on the islands where people are driving by and they hold signs, or in Rockford, they'll be on the median strip at a busy intersection. Okay, that's the afflicted in the gate, because they're literally in the gates, pretty much. Places where people are passing through, commerce is going through. The Lord will plead their cause. All right, let's look at that word. That's not really the right word. King James only people would probably be, I guess, offended at that, because that I ever suggest there's anything wrong with the King James. But, some verses are almost unintelligible. And I should make a list of them sometime. Like, as I go, I should have a piece of paper here where I write down. I think I did it start to have, where I write down verses from the King James that I find problematic. This isn't one of them, but I'm going to have the paper ready anyways. And it's not just a question of the interpretation, it's just a bad translation. There's some like that. I said, it's not, I like that they don't interpret things, and sometimes they get it wrong, but it's still technically right. Like, the words are basically right, but sometimes they're pretty far off. Okay, plead their cause. But the word plead is one what? Cause is, we'll look up both words. Rib or rub. Or reeb or rub. Notice the I is pronounced as a long E. And in most other languages, it's like that. And a lot of that, like Isaiah, we say Isaiah or Isaac is completely wrong. It's Isaac, Isaiah. That's all right. That's how we do it in English. We always just run over everybody. We call them Indians, and we bastardize their names and all that, right? Oh, it's okay. People always say my name wrong. I don't find it offensive, Rube. A primitive root properly to toss, that is grapple, mostly figuratively to wrangle. Hold a controversy, by implication to defend. Usually it means like he's going to take their side and be their advocate in that wrangling type thing. He's going to be their wrangler on their behalf. This is strife or dispute. It's like he's like saying, I'm going to be like their attorney, is the kind of the idea behind it. Like, I'm going to take their side, and he's the judge. When you don't want the judge when he's just explicitly not there as he's already decided the case, is sort of say, I'm going to take their side and spoil your souls. Spoil your souls. Fear not them that destroy the body, and afterward they can do no more. But fear rather him which is after he hath killed is able to destroy both soul and body in Gehenna, which is often thought of as hell, though for most of history, hell is not Gehenna. For example, right now, Gehenna is not on fire. I don't think so. I don't think the Israelites do they currently have garbage there? I forgot how it goes. I forgot what's currently in Gehenna. Meaning the actual physical place, the valley. Hades, however, is the way it's currently referred to, or Sheol, the abode of the dead, which for me is just the grave. Until the day of judgment. Okay. So the Lord will plead the cause and spoil the soul of those that spoiled him. Again, spoil. And say, well, they're. To me, it's just like saying, they say, well, this implies eternal torment. Well, it could if you want to read that into it, I guess. But also, like, the idea of spoiling something. It's like, in fact, this is one of the, it says perhaps to rob is what I looked at. Hold on, let's look at this word here. This is interesting because this is an uncommon word, I guess. No, it's used quite a bit. 6 occurrences, okay. See, we got it. Oh, in our favorite Malachi passage, will a man rob God? That's what I was talking about. Oh, where have you robbed me? In tithes and offerings, right? So you guys all owe me 10% of your income for every time for all this time, right? No, you don't. First of all, that was kind of a tax. Also, the tithe, I don't do all that the priests did for Israel, and I don't deserve no tenth of anybody. Neither does any pastor, preacher. Well, some pastors are worthy of their hire. They do. I never want to take that away because a servant is worthy of his hire. If he does his job and he does a good job and he teaches the word and he does whatever a pastor is supposed to be doing, I don't know that pastor explicitly has to be a teacher, to tell you the truth. And for that case, then it's like, well, why is he talking, right? Why is he talking? No, I mean, because the idea of pastoring makes me think of like, you bring the flock together and like almost like a master of sort of like your job is like when a pastor counsels a married couple, I really feel like that's pastor's work. It sounds like it fits that job of a shepherd, whatever the New Testament, because the New Testament only mentions pastors like once in a positive way when it talks about gifts. Every other time Jesus is either talking about himself as the true shepherd, or it's a literal shepherd, or he's talking about false shepherds and all this other stuff, hirelings, and shepherds often come off pretty bad in most of what he talks about. But because judgment begins at the house of God, judgment begins at the prophets. So it's a frightening thing to be in the Lord's service. That's why I think I explicitly fear God. I think above other people in the faith sometimes, because I've gone farther into it and I've seen greater terror. I laugh, but I'm not kidding. Definition: perhaps to rob, Kaaba. Interesting that's Kaaba, because I think of the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia. Probably not the same thing. It just sounds like it, right? Masculine singular, participle active, blah, blah, blah. A primitive root to cover, that is figuratively to defraud. I get like under here we have a prime piece of, there's a prime something or other, like some sort of hidden little scheme. Interesting. Like to defraud in that sense. That, I mean, don't think literally it means to cover, but it means to defraud. Well, because will a man rob God? It's not a sense of robbery like we think of like armed robbery. It's defrauding God. You owe him money and you're not paying it. You're hiding the money or whatever. You're hiding things from him or whatever in that sense of defraud. And there, this is the first one, the first occurrence of the word. He will defraud the souls of them that defraud them. And that's a good, And you know what's kind of funny is it makes complete sense. There's a verse in the New Testament that agrees with this 100%. Let's look at it. And I talk about it a lot, but I think it's important to remember. 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians, I forget which. Because like I said, God. Oh, we gotta go back. It's 2. It's not 3. It's just before 3. All right. What man knoweth the things of a man, saving the spirit? Oh, I'm not in the right. Sorry, I got over here and then I forgot to bring you along for the ride. For what man knoweth the things of a man, save the spirit of man which is in him? Even so, the things of God knoweth no man, but the Spirit of God. And it just said, God has revealed. Let's go. Yeah. Well, I should have started reading sooner. I don't know why I read right there. Howbeit, verse 6. Well, no, verse 5. That your faith should not stand in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Howbeit, we speak wisdom among them that are perfect. Yet not the wisdom of this world, nor of the princes of this world that come to naught. But we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom, which God ordained before the world unto our glory. This is how God defrauds their souls, because he hides this wisdom from them. Because if they knew, they would act differently. It's kind of a fraud. It's true. Because he hides it from them. And it says there in Proverbs. You call me a liar? It says there in Proverbs. He will defraud them. which none of the princes of this world knew. They don't know this wisdom. God ordained it before the world unto our glory, but none of the princes of this world know it. For had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory, nor done any of the other innumerable things that they do, because of self-interest. If they have that certain knowledge. You know what's funny? It's not, I think Monty Python, I've always enjoyed a lot of their work, and I think they have an interesting critique, but in many ways they're wrong. Like Terry Gilliam in his, what was it, the one with all the time bandits, right? And he's looking at the problem of evil, and he doesn't quite get it. But what I was going to say about that, hold on a second, is, let me have a sip of water. When they're discussing faith, a lot of times I hear people talk about not just Monty Python, but in England it seems to be like almost like an old trope, and because I think it's the Anglican Church, a lot of them probably used to say this, that that if you had proof of God, then there'd be no more use of faith. On some level, I get it. If that proof was like constantly refreshed, because it's like I said, I encountered God when I received the Holy Spirit in a powerful way that I've described many times, and which convinced me this is not a normal thing that happens to people. It's because it never happened to me, and it's not just like warm feeling. I felt like the warm embrace of the Holy Spirit sort of thing, that people have explained by, because you can feel it when you're in love with a woman too, like that sort of emotional stuff. This was not emotion. This is power surging over my hands, my ears, my lips, my feet, exclusively on those areas. And it was surging power, nothing else. It was almost, well, whatever. Anyways, point is, it convinced me. But that doesn't mean like it cast out all my doubt. It cast out most of my doubts. I thought it cast out all my doubts. But as time goes on and that experience becomes more of a distant memory, and a fuzzy memory at that, of course, because you can't keep all your memories crystal clear unless you refresh them constantly, or you have a gift for it. Some people do. It still leaves room for some kinds of doubts. Like I said, I could question that. There's certainly, that's not like the experience I had, though, remarkable. I mean, I could have been aliens in a UFO hovering over the scene, having a funny time. All right, I could imagine that, but I mean, I don't believe that. But I could understand why there could be room for doubt. Like I said, if Jesus came down from the sky and walked, Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist evolutionary biologist, I believe that's his actual field, right? He said that nothing could convince him. He was so committed to his belief, his unbelief in God, his belief that God does not exist, that even if Jesus himself, he observed Jesus coming down from the sky to tell him about the reality. He didn't use this specific example, but he used example. He would presume he was having a hallucination and he had lost his mind. Now, I don't know that I believe him. I think he's full of what. I think he'd pull up an Apostle Paul, like many do. And see, because they don't have that. When men don't have the wisdom, they run around persecuting Christians. They go around, having people murdered with their coats at their feet, But when the wisdom comes, Paul knows better than anybody about this. Because when the wisdom was hidden from him, he was doing all kinds of atrocities. And those that do atrocities, those that persecute the poor, including the poor in spirit, by the rich in spirit, like I said, those people who think they're full of, I'm so blessed. It's like, not and then what do you do for your brother? You gotta understand your own spiritual poverty. You need more of the Holy Spirit. Think you're full of it. I'm full of the Holy Spirit, but it's not enough. I'm full, but he's bigger than that. You know what I mean? I need him to put a double dose, triple dose, quadruple dose in. So, study mode. Here we go. Anyways, I like those verses. Make no friendship with an angry man. With a furious man, thou shalt not go. Lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. Yeah, the way of anger, you know, I don't know. I remember hearing about guys who I knew from high school who were nice guys, but then I remember one guy's like, yeah, at college, all he did was get drunk and get into brawls. Or like that was his like passion in life suddenly or something. I don't know. He'd get drunk and go fight. Get drunk and fight. I never understood the impulse to fight when you get drunk. I remember guys kind of trying to get into it with me, which was funny to me because they were usually much smaller. And that's why I think they always let me talk them out of it. Because it was always like, I'm like, what? You know, I just smile. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And I just be friendly guy. I'm like, nah, you know, like, I don't know. I knew how to talk out of it because, you know, as an adult, well, not, you know, as an adult, after about 20, I don't think I ever got in a fight. I believe so, yeah. And that wasn't really a fight. It was more of me just assaulting someone, so. Anywho, I'm not assaulting. Well, I guess it's an assault and battery, right? In Illinois, assault is just when you make someone afraid, at least in our state. Like if you like just at somebody, that can be an assault. Like if you make them genuinely feel like you're going to come at them, that's assault. So you gotta be careful. But you don't want to make lunging motions at people or do anything that makes them fear violence. It's illegal. And spanking a child is very different, though. It is not an act of violence. It is an act of discipline. People often get confused with that because it's like you got to do it almost ritualistically. You shouldn't be all angry and like flailing your arms and crap. You should spank the kid when you're not angry, for sure. Get a hold of yourself because you want to make sure you give them the exact measure of sting that does not wound, but only gives them a little sting, a reminder that they done wrong. Especially the little one. A tiny little swat on the butt really goes a long way. It's amazing how much they will just, for a little bit, you know, because most of it is just they know they're being punished. I said, it doesn't even really begin until about 2 anyways. You know, make sure they're nice and sturdy for a little correction. So prior to that, just brush their teeth and, you know, sometimes you tell them no and then you stick by it. You know, make them understand that when you say no, you mean it. You know, and just, that's all. Just be consistent. Oh, I'm talking about kids, whatever. But I think it's funny because babies are often really angry about stuff. Man, they don't get their way, they get angry. Someone who hasn't like learned to temper themselves as an adult, and because I know I feel the fury build up in me at times. You know, and you gotta try not to let it out. Self-control is a very important virtue. You know, it is the essence of what it means to be gentle. And in the New Testament, it'll talk about gentleness, or what's another word that's used in the King James? I forget. But there are words that it means like to be restrained. It doesn't mean that you're like meek. That's another one. It's meek, often translated. And people often think that means like a little mouse in the corner. No, meek means, you know, sometimes it cracks me up when Jordan Peterson tries to define it because he'll talk about someone who has a sword and knows how to use it but keeps it in their sheath. That must be somewhere from literature, like the Greek. And I get it, but like they don't. I've never seen it defined that way in a lexicon. Okay, that's not how it works. But I get it. He must have talked with somebody who knows a lot more about the Greek language as a whole, because that's probably from that word got defined. Probably they reached back into other Greek writing to understand. That's what they do very often. You know, when you have a lot of different writing, you can understand what it means. So the Greek is, I think, more well understood in a certain way because of the fact that there's more of it. There's not as much Hebrew, I think, to compare, right? as far as there's a lot more other Greek literature. There's not a lot of other Hebrew literature, I suppose, other than the apocryphal books, and I'm not even sure if those are in Hebrew. Well, some of them would be, of course, but that's still a very limited thing. Anyways, compared to the body of Greek texts that are out there, there's a lot of stuff was written in Greek even in the Roman times. All right, for the New Testament, for the Lord will plead their cause, but things like, I believe, Plato, of course, Aristotle, Homer, all that. That was obviously before some overlap. Anyways, this is a Roman time, before the Roman Empire, certainly, but not before Roman times, because they were around. All right, so we talked about the angry man. Yeah, you don't want, and it does, people who get angry and express it a lot, it is a sort of contagion, like yawning. Like certain things, misery loves company, and anger does too. People like to get angry. When people get angry with them, it helps feed the fire, and so, that leads to mobs and things like that we pretty much say in society are not acceptable. Mob action and anger in that way, though at times, certainly there's an appropriate expression of anger. But not from, someone who's habitually angry and angry at the drop of a hat and for whatever cause, for every slight and affront. That's not, because when it says an angry man, I immediately think of someone who's, they're characterized by anger. Like I said, it's like, when it says the fearful and the unbelieving, the abominable and murderers and fornicators and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake of fire in Revelation 21, when it says that, fearful, it means like fearful as a way of life. I mean, we're called upon to fear the Lord. Even in Christ, even with our trust of the Lord, there is yet the fear of the Lord. It is not, like I said, it's a measured thing. Meaning, as far as it's not just like this unbridled like terror, but it is something that's, in the sense of when you're confronted with the infinite, what can you do but fear? If you were close to a black hole, wouldn't be a bit scared, especially if you were within its reach. So being in its reach, and God, we are in His reach. And if we don't watch out, our souls will be spoiled, defrauded. Because you thought, it's like, I thought I could just do whatever I want. I thought I could just do whatever I want. There be no you mean that there was consequences? God, why didn't you convince me you were real? Because you disgust me. That's why. But you had mercy on him. Doesn't he disgust you? Yeah. But y'all disgust me. What do you think? You just got it coming? He has mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will he hardens. That's why you'll never hear me talk about, though I know, I would rather glory in my weaknesses than boast in all my strengths. That's why when I talk about certain things, I don't call them strengths even. I'll just say, because to me it's like, I have no boast in that. It's like, I've never committed adultery. I'm not a Casanova. Why would I boast about that? That's not much at all. It's the places where I suck that I need that needs attention. I don't do what they do. I'm not a pedophile like them. Well, good for me. It's like, how'd you like to wrestle with that a bit? It's like, I get it. That it would be better for a millstone to be hung about your neck than you should offend one of these little ones. But still, I'm thankful to God that I was not made like that. Or with that even as because I like to think it's not even possible. Because it's, because if you think, because if I were to think, well, it's because stuff happened to them. Well, that's pretty tragic then, And oftentimes it is a tragic story. That's why I pity them, because it is better. It is better to have a millstone hung about your neck and be thrown into the sea than to fall into the hands of God having done so evil. He will, And that's the thing, because people think they can get away with it. Because God does not immediately punish evil. They look around, they go, okay, nothing happened. I guess I can do whatever I want. And they're going to feel ripped off. You bet. They're going to feel ripped off. But you know what? It's like a lot of people say. And it's funny because God believes in it too. Do good for goodness sake. Not because you think God's the cop. You know? He doesn't much appreciate that. This whole thing like that, oh, the only reason you're going to do is because, I get it, you fear me. If you truly knew what I was and you could truly behold my majesty, you'd die from the fear of it. Literally, your heart would collapse it would you'd probably just explode or whatever. You'd die. If you could see God in his fullness. That's what it always says. Men believe it, and I think it's true. As far as in the human flesh body, the fullness, it'd be like walking into the sun. And so, God is always somewhat veiled, or in Christ, in the veil of his flesh. The flesh veils somewhat the divinity because people couldn't even tell. People couldn't tell, like just looking at him, that he was divine. Now, some people would get that sense, but that's the Holy Spirit speaking. That wasn't because there was anything actually remarkable about his external appearance. Other than remarkable. That doesn't mean he was like ugly or whatever. It's just not, it was just another man. You weren't like, look at that guy. He's so, if ever, like with Saul, they were like, look at this guy. He's a king if you ever saw one. You know? All right. Yeah, anger is a snare. And being friends with angry people, like a lot, bad company corrupts good manners, which is behavior. That's manners in King James. Really, you think that really swings well in the modern era? That's a perfect translation for English-speaking people. Bad company corrupts good behavior. And if you've been, and I know this, like I tell the story about when I was in school, right? I got led into stealing with my new friends. Okay, be not one of them that strike hands, for of them that are sureties for debts. We've talked about surety a lot, right? Making sure debts for people, making deals, we'll shake on it, right? Promising. If you have nothing to pay, it has to do with, it's talking about borrowing. If you have nothing to pay, why should he take away thy bed from under thee? They didn't have things like bankruptcy protection in those days. So it's like I said, when you lost everything, you literally lost everything. They'd come and take your bed. I filed bankruptcy once, and I remember you had to list everything you possess. I still have that list of everything I possessed at the time. And you list all your possessions and the relative value. You get to protect some of it. A certain amount of personal property, like $2,000 worth. You can protect your homestead exemption for your home, which is amazing. You can actually protect just your home from collections. That's crazy. But of course, when your home is mortgaged and stuff, to me, I was just like, But the thing is, it's hard to buy a home without a mortgage, right? You can get low interest rates. It's not as treacherous as it was in the days of the Proverbs, okay? But certainly, notice that he's mostly the guarantors of the debts that he feels like, in that sense, I get it, because they still, when with the laws the way they are, when people go bankrupt, then they get screwed, and people don't. And if you're guaranteeing someone else's debt, well, that means when they don't pay, you pay. And whatever. So, why should you take away your bed from under you? Well, again, going to the very utmost to let you know, it's like it gets right down there in the nitty gritty. Sometimes people have to sell off even their family members back in those days. And people will say, like, well, why is God God commands them to sell their daughters. He doesn't command anybody. It allows it because, like I said, just with divorce, for the hardness of men's hearts. Because if there wasn't some way they could pay it back, they'd probably kill each other, And when you sell yourself off, also they weren't allowed. They were supposed to sell them to other Israelites. For one, it was not legal to sell them out of the country, and also it'd be for a period of time till the debt was paid. Remove not the ancient landmark, which thy fathers have said. There's an interesting just single verse proverb, because I don't think it necessarily connects to either, right? But I do look at it like, of course, now there's literally sometimes, like it says, remember that verse we read later about removing the landmark of the fatherless? Because that quite literally, like someone might, their father dies, and then they inherit something, and you move the landmarks. So, oh yeah, here's your field. Oh, I remembered it was bigger. No, this is it. They stole part of his property from him. So there's that literal interpretation, but there's also like a more metaphorical one, where it's like tradition, boundaries, taboos. Things that people have for a long time. For example, boundaries is a great example, because a landmark is what it marks a boundary from between one place and another. And boundaries are a very important thing in life. Boundaries between people, boundaries between countries, boundaries between behaviors. Meaning, like like my sexual behavior has very specific boundaries around it. It's like I only with my wife. That's boundaries. And that's a very ancient boundary, right? Adultery, thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not murder. Those are also boundaries. Here's the line. Do not cross it. That line, do not move it. And that's why I talk about with things like homosexual marriage. It's moving an ancient boundary, which used to say, no. It wasn't even no. It was like, what are you talking about? Gay men always had the right to marry. They could always marry a woman and have a family and have a gay lover on the side. That is how it used to be done. All right? That's how you got a family. Now, obviously, you're ripping off the woman there and committing adultery on her I'm just saying. But the idea that they didn't have the right to marry, marriage itself is, like I said, it is a boundary that's constructed around one thing. And that is the sexual act that creates children. It's meant to regulate sex, specifically, and to protect the woman so that she can bear a child and have, because she's very vulnerable while she's bearing that child and while the child's young. And she needs a committed man, preferably, obviously, and I mean preferable to what? To not having anyone there. Now, it's fine. My wife helps our daughter-in-law with her baby all the time. And women can do that. But women are not men. And they do not provide to children the necessary ingredient that men provide. And neither are men women. And they cannot provide to children the necessary ingredient that women provide. And though they may try, and though they may do somewhat, they will, in the end, it is, I want to use a word that doesn't set off too many red flags and anger people. But it is a froward way. It is a very froward way. It is very off the mark. Like I've described, sex itself involves the penetration, right, in that specific spot. There's a very definite target. You know what I mean? There's a target involved. If you were to consider the definition of sex, Bill Clinton, when he said, I did not have sex with that woman, he meant a very specific thing. And at that time, that was a very dubious comment, because we know he was being dishonest in the way he was using that, because he had what amounted to was what we would consider sexual contact, but he did not have sexual intercourse. Now, we call that contact sexual because it is intimate. It is part of sexual play. But it is not really sex. The essence of sex is penetration. And a man cannot can do something that's a simulation of that, but it is not the same. And when you try to put that on equal footing with what men of all cultures, and human beings of all cultures, have regarded as the fundamental institution of society, you're only asking for trouble. It's not, when you remove it, it's not just old fuddy-duddies don't remove the old landmark. There's a reason. Boundaries exist for a reason, And and like I said, I'm not a pure pragmatist. To me, that's like, it's not just pragmatic. I remember people would talk about, well, CAs, that proves that, well, what about when they cure it? I mean, or whatever. It's like, I do think of it, I pity people who suffer from it, just like I pity people who suffer from all kinds of sins. Because like I said, some sins are just not in me. Like, I don't have any temptation to homosexuality. But if I did, what a burden that would be to bear. But it's a burden that can be borne, has been borne. I'll tell you what, I have a lot of burdens to bear in life, and none of them have made me particularly happy. You know what I mean? Like, all the things I've ever struggled against. I never was happy about having that struggle. But I'll tell you what, I felt a great deal of satisfaction in my victory. And, until you walk a mile in another man's shoes, it's good to be pitiful, and I do think that is the way of Christ, because he was merciful to the woman who was caught in the act of adultery, which is a stonable offense. I do think that all those crimes of passion that have to, where there's a victim, but it's a victim's heart. Someone's heart is broken. These wounds can be very deep indeed, but the Lord Jesus, though they are worthy of death, he says, go and sin no more. I won't condemn you. So I don't condemn homosexuals. I say, go and sin no more. If it's possible. I like I said, I don't like to get on it too bad, because like I said, my life is just like I like it, just the way I want it. I have my woman. I love that, I'm very content that way. And, I wouldn't want someone to try to do something, you shouldn't defraud, you shouldn't marry a woman if like you can't love her. Like you are, or that there's something fake about the love you have, I get it. That's the way it was done. Or sometimes they'd go into the priesthood, right? That's why we've had a lot of issues with the priesthood, because men often flee there when they feel those urges, and as a way of containing them. I prefer to think that than to think that those individuals just crept into the church on purpose. I'm sure there actually are some of those people who go into certain professions for wicked purposes. And it's funny to me, because it's like, you gotta understand, I as a wrestling coach, am trained to spot sexual abuse of children and stuff, and also to recognize grooming behaviors by the adults are performing. And you understand? It's like I already. And why do I have to have all this training? Because I coach kids, and I gotta watch the other coaches, and I gotta watch the parents. I gotta make sure nothing funny's going on. And I'd be utterly naive if I didn't think that things that give you power over children aren't going to be attractive to weirdos. It will be, and they will purposely put themselves into those occupations. Like, of course, if you were, like, why would, like, they often are found, looking to get positions of trust. In fact, often they just are people who are already trusted, like uncle or grandfather. Unfortunately, that's very terrible. But people who are, looking for strangers, maybe they have some sort of, they still got that scruple, like they can't cross over that boundary. But there's another one they're willing to do, which is somebody else's children or whatever. And yeah. But do they go into the teaching profession? Of course they do. Of course they do. It's one of the reasons I always kind of look askew at high school teachers, male ones anyways. I'm like, I don't know. I like my teenagers, but I find most teenagers to be quite annoying. Quite true. Even when I was a teenager. Because I remember back when I was a teenager and I look at them, I'm like, eh. It's nice when you find a young person that's been well raised. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men. You know, it goes back to those other things that it says about, you know, hey, what was it? The one who, was it all the way back in 21? I guess it was. Wow, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. Oh, no, that's not the one. But the one about how if you, he that loveth pureness, was it pureness? Yeah, pureness. He that loveth pureness, he will have the favor of the king. Something like that. Good name is better. There it goes. He that loveth pureness of heart, for the grace of his lips, the king shall be his friend. And the man that's diligent, of course, because, and again, it takes you to the extreme of like standing before kings. Does that happen to every person who is a diligent person in business? Not literally, but the point is, you know, standing before kings means answerable to high authority, which is, you know, we're all answerable to high authority, and also getting the interest of high authority. You know, what's he doing? This man is full of industry. Bring him before me. I'd like to meet this gentleman. You know, it's meant to be like a summons before the king. This can be good, especially if you're not doing anything wrong. But the idea of standing before the king as an idea of like judgment and also of approval. You know what I mean? But he could disapprove. That's the point. It's like the point of the king is they're approving of the man. He is standing before him in his form of judgment, like we stand before the judgment. And he will not stand before mean men of low degree. I wonder if I'm just going to check the Hebrew on that just briefly, if there's anything worthy of, yeah. I'm going to look at it, actually. The word men is actually not in, I believe, Strong's numbers. Okay, yeah. They have it in brackets. And one thing I don't have in my King James, which is just this text, is the italicized words. And that tells you which ones they had to supply. I mean, they supplied words for clarity. So man is not even there. It is probably better translated the low or something like that. But let's look at that word mean. Wrong place. Sorry. We probably won't go into the next chapter. Yeah. Oh, there we go. He will not stand before mean men, the word being this last one here, chasok, or chashok. Chashok. I can't do it. Chashok. Anyways, obscure or low. He will not stand before obscure. I guess it's only used once. Don't get much. Only masculine plural. Meaning, chasak, dark, figuratively obscure. Oh. Yeah. Well, and also standing before the king is like, things coming to light. Stand before low. Well, that means not very important. Again, but I always say this, that, the King of Kings observes. The king, he is the one who I want to stand before. These earthly kings I don't care about. But, it's true. And you think about, like, also the fact that, the way money corrupts politics. I mean, people who are rich, the politicians are interested in talking to them, right? Because they need money for their campaigns. And also they could use some advice on stock tips, huh? To be or go dark. So, it's not mean in the sense of low, but in the sense of obscure. Like a king is famous. It's like the opposite of famous. Nobodies. He's not going to stand before nobodies. And that also implies like their judgment. You know what I mean? Like they're standing over him. A lot of times mean men, obscure people, they They despise, like they call, what do they call it, the lobster pot effect or crab pot, where it's a bunch of crabs all trying to get out of the pot, and they all keep, pulling each other back down as they try to get out, and nobody gets to get out. And people have that attitude sometimes, like they did with Jesus. All right, is not this the carpenter's son? Is not his mother with us? Are not his brethren with us? How is it he has this great doctrine? What is this? It's like they were offended because of him. They could not receive him because familiarity had bred contempt. And so, a lot of times people, when they, if something good starts happening to you, you can find some friends aren't about holding you up. They're about pulling you down. They don't want you getting out of the crab pot. They want to keep you down in the mud. That's why when you turn your life over to Christ, a lot of times those old friends, you got to get away from them because they will pull you back down. They will return you to sin just as surely as anything. I mean, that is guaranteed. If you hang around with the same old people, it's not that you can't have anything to do with them. I still had things to do with my friends. I'd call them up and we'd go play basketball. That's a nice, a nice afternoon activity with no chance of drinking or doing drugs, right? And because it wasn't the right time. And it sort of was a good way to be friends with people because it wasn't like they were like pagans. It's like hard to differentiate. Well, I'm a Christian now. It's like, well, we're Christians too. What's going on? You were a Christian before. What? So I said, it's like, it's odd when you gain the zeal of a convert when you've been born into it. It's not common. But I'm happy to have received it. I need that zeal. And zeal and diligence, being diligent. Diligent is a word that comes out a lot in the scriptures, and we are definitely called to be diligent, to study the word, to be diligent, to know Christ. That's why we read his books, read the Gospels. Applying the lessons that we learn from him. That is our method of living. If you want to stand before the king, be diligent in his business. That's a great example too, like the parable of the talents, right? What happened to the man with the one talent? He got thrown out. The king threw him out because he wasn't diligent. Because like I said, if you're given time, it's one thing if you come to Christ and you're hanging on a cross. You don't need to be baptized. You don't need nothing. You don't need any work. Faith is alone enough. In that, because literally his hands are literally fixed. All he could do, his only work he could do was faith out of his mouth. That's all he could do. And that technically that's all that's necessary. But you're given time and talent and you do nothing with it. You're given 20 years with the mind God gave you, 20 years with the body he gave, since you first believed, and you make no progress. Thank God that's not true of anyone listening to my voice. But I mean, the very suggestion of it. And it's in the scriptures, there's a one-talent guy. And like I said, it's pure nominal belief. It's pure going through the motions and having a total disconnect. It's a blindness, too, because there's no way you could do that unless you were totally asleep and not aware of the hidden wisdom. Which is like, wow, I got to pay attention to this. So I want to stand before Christ. So I'm going to be about his business. You want to stand before Christ and not stand before obscure men? I don't know if that's, again, that's more of like just saying they will be in high honor, not in low honor. Or, as far as like, I don't know how to, it's not as though there's another judge, really, in any real sense. But, people often submit you, like Jesus. He stood before mean men, at times. Like when they wanted to crucify him and stuff, it's like those moments of judgment where it's like, they were not fit to judge him. But again, that goes part and parcel with him being falsely and wrongfully treated like a criminal. But it's also part of what breaks the law in a sense, because curses every man that hangs on a tree. Well, Christ can't be made a curse, so the law is made a curse because he was perfect. There's no curse on him. And so the curse also he removes from us, so we can walk in newness of life and not in the curse of sin and death. All right, so that's it. We'll continue next week in chapter 23. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And we'll see you next week.
For the iniquity of his covetousness was I wroth, and smote him. I hid me and was wroth, and he went on frowardly in the way of his heart. I have seen his ways and will heal him. I will lead him also and restore comforts to him, and to his mourners I create the fruit of the lips. Peace, peace to him that is far off, and to him that is near, saith the Lord, and I will heal him. But the wicked are like the troubled sea when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and